Hey, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. It's the Friday the 13th show, A Nightmare on News Street. In his final months in office, President Biden has finally figured out a way to relieve pressure on his administration for supporting a genocide in Gaza. And that is by provoking World War III. The New York Times reported that Biden is likely to approve a change of policy that will allow Ukraine to use long-range missiles provided by the United States against targets deep inside of Russia. The Pentagon provides Kyiv with Army tactical missile systems that could reach targets more than 180 miles away. The British and French militaries also provide Ukraine with long-range munitions and have been lobbying the White House to loosen restrictions. This would be yet another escalation in U.S. support for the Ukrainian war effort, which carries risks of provoking a nuclear-armed country headed by President Vladimir Putin. And in response to those reports that the U.S. might approve using Western long-range missiles to attack Russian territory, Putin issued a threat, saying, quote, "This will mean that NATO countries, the United States and European countries, are at war with Russia. And if this is the case, then bearing in mind the change in the essence of the conflict, we will make appropriate decisions in response to the threats that will be posed to us." The Times noted that this brinkmanship has been the theme of the war. Quote, "At every stage, Mr. Biden has been concerned that providing new weapons to Ukraine or allowing Ukraine's military to shoot into Russian territory would cross one of Mr. Putin's red lines. In the opening months of the war, Mr. Biden was reluctant to provide HIMARS artillery to Ukraine, then M1 Abrams tanks, F-16 fighter jets, and short and then longer range Army tactical missile systems. But in each case, as the administration discovered Mr. Putin appeared less eager to escalate the war than initially believed, it loosened the reins. Thank you, President Putin, I guess, for showing restraint and not starting World War III. But I do worry this strategy is unsustainable because the one time it doesn't work could trigger a series of events that ends in a nuclear exchange. And that's more frightening than any horror movie you'll watch tonight. The Boeing strike is on. For the first time in 16 years, the airplane maker is dealing with a worker picket after the machinists union voted to reject the tentative agreement that was on the table. 95% of members of the International Association of Machinists, which represents about 33,000 Boeing workers, voted down the contract. And then 96% voted to reaffirm the strike authorization vote the union took over the summer. They're hoping that a strike can achieve what negotiators were unable to, which is to force Boeing to bring back defined benefit pension plans. Shop steward told Labor Notes, quote, "That is the hill that many of us are ready to die on." Workers also want to see a better offer on wage increases. The tentative agreement they rejected included a 25% boost over 4 years, which workers said barely compensates them for what they've lost due to cost of living increases over the last few years. With the rejection of the tentative agreement, the current labor contract with Boeing expired at midnight on Thursday, and as of Friday morning, workers have already started picketing. It's good to be in the business of providing people with essentials they need to survive, because even when you price gouge them, they still have to buy. Even better when you have a lot of market power and there aren't many other options for people to choose. In related news, Kroger announced this week that in the second quarter of the year, it made $466 million, bringing its earnings to date to $1.4 billion, almost double what it was last year. Kroger is currently trying to increase its market power by purchasing Albertsons. That merger is on hold and under review by the Federal Trade Commission. During an administrative hearing on the matter last month, Kroger's Senior Director of Pricing, Andy Groff, admitted in testimony that the grocer increased prices, quote, significantly higher than cost inflation. According to a recent report from the Economic Policy Institute, this has been a phenomenon across the economy ever since corporations used the cover of the pandemic to price gouge customers. Check out this chart from EPI showing the spike in corporate profits right at the onset of the COVID wave. Those profits were directly linked to inflation. EPI found that in the middle of 2021, profit-seeking accounted for more than 2/3 of inflation. Hell, in the second quarter of the year, it was 94.5% of inflation. And even today, in 2024, corporate profits explain about 1/3 of inflation, about triple the average before the pandemic. These higher prices maximize profits but eat into workers' wealth, where their paycheck has to go into buying shit like groceries. And even though there were wage increases, they did not increase at the same rate as these profits or price increases. EPI noted, quote, excess corporate power is the backdrop of nearly all economic trends in recent decades. However, for most of the post-1979 period until the pandemic, this corporate power was mostly leveraged to suppress wage growth for workers rather than raising prices charged to customers. The end result, though, was largely the same. As in past recoveries from steep recessions, there was a rapid increase in the share of total income claimed by profits rather than going to workers' pay. Hell, you can't even buy a pitchfork these days for less than $50. It's Friday, time to deal with the rich dicks that walk amongst us. Actually, they don't walk amongst us. They fly private jets and have chauffeured cars and shit. All the more reason to shame them. We got some good nominations on the Means TV message board, including from Arona, who is back to nominate all the goddamn landlords. We've been missing that. Thank you. Also got a nomination for San Antonio's mayor, Ron Nirenberg, and the city council, which voted to approve a new $160 million AA baseball stadium that will displace residents. And here's a nomination for Galen Weston Jr., the CEO of Canadian grocer Loblaws, which, like Kroger in the US, has been screwing over consumers in Canada with jacked up prices and also doesn't pay their workers enough. Do better, you prick. Again, thank you for the nominations, but this week's rich dick is Jared Isaacman. He's the billionaire who's in space right now, which should be all I need to say. Thanks to John Kelly for the nomination. I think they nailed it this week. Isaacman made his fortune skimming off the top of electronic transactions. He founded a company, now called Shift4, that processes hundreds of billions of dollars in payments every year and collects fees on each one. Isaacman then went on to assemble the world's largest private air force, naturally, accumulating 150 jets, including F-16 fighter planes, with a different company he founded, known as Draken International, a defense contractor that offers flight training and other services to military pilots for the US, the UK, and NATO. Isaacman eventually sold that war profiteering firm and has since taken his billions to go on joyrides in space with the help of perennial rich dick Elon Musk. First in 2021 with Inspiration 4, in which Isaacman and 3 others launched aboard an automated SpaceX rocket and spent 3 days in orbit, considered the first private human spaceflight since no one on board were astronauts of any government. It was funded by private investors to the tune of $50 million a seat. And now, with the Polaris Dawn mission, Isaacman dropped $200 million to command a SpaceX rocket with 3 other private crew members and go further out in orbit on a riskier mission and do a spacewalk. Here's Isaacman emerging from his capsule and having his Neil Armstrong moment.
There's SpaceX. Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
Well, if we have so much work to do on Earth, then what the hell are you doing way up there, dude? Honestly, this is all kind of weak, since humanity has been sending people on spacewalks for over a half century, including doing very complicated work. So who gives a shit if a billionaire awkwardly pokes his head out of a ship for a few minutes? Last month, Isaacman was posting on Twitter, responding to critics of this new era of billionaire spaceflight and how many resources are being wasted on it and the damage it's doing to the environment. Isaacman claimed, quote, "We can explore the cosmos and build children's hospitals. We can advance our species and strive to cure childhood cancer. We can attempt to unlock the mysteries of the universe and improve the climate here at home. Those who see this as a binary choice where resources must be allocated to one side or the other are incredibly short-sighted. In fact, by attempting to delay progress, they may actually be making things worse. Look, guys, how the hell are we going to cure cancer if I don't go up in space for a few days? In fact, by denying me this, you actually might be delaying a cure for cancer. Theoretically, Isaacman is right. We can explore the universe and cure cancer, but not with the current distribution of resources that allow billionaires like him to even exist. And also, the best path for exploring the universe right now is through robots, not people. We know what's on the moon. We know what's on Mars. Ain't nothing there for people. Which makes stuff like Isaacman's Polaris Dawn all nonsense. It's also likely in violation of international law. Al Jazeera published a report this week about how the mission could put the U.S. in breach of the 57-year-old Outer Space Treaty, signed by all the major spacefaring countries in the world. According to Article 6 of that treaty, any non-governmental entities engaged in spaceflight must be supervised by the host nation's government. But with Polaris Dawn, there's actually no governmental oversight body. The FAA has jurisdiction over the launch, but once it's in space, the FAA's oversight has been limited by Congress. Both the FAA and NASA confirmed to Al Jazeera that they have no oversight or involvement with Polaris Dawn's spacewalk mission. Quote, "The humans on board sign their informed consent. When they spacewalk, only SpaceX will look after them." Tomasa Scoba, the executive director of the International Association for the Advancement of Space Safety, told Al Jazeera, quote, "This is a mission which violates Article 6 of the Outer Space Treaty. It's a well-known issue, which of course has a history." Well, someone needs to inform Mr. Scoba that Isaacman is a billionaire and thus the rules or laws, either domestic or international, don't apply to him. In fact, the only thing that can reach him is the long arm of Means Morning News, because Jared Isaacman is this week's rich dick. Can we just leave him in space? Okay, friends, the show ends with a sunrise from Pennsylvania. It was sent in by Nate in Lancaster County. Enjoy. Thank you, Nate. Show's over. Thank you for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV, subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and follow us on social media. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we're going to be right here. See you next week.